The Call of Duty Zombies Iceberg number 6. I'm not going to comment on how many of these I've done because I did that last time, but 6 guys. 6. I've come back with the milk and we've got ourselves another grey iceberg chart. And for those of you that don't know what an iceberg chart is, I'm not going to explain it this time because you've had 5 other times of me waffling on about it. You probably know by now. If you've been living under a Dwayne Johnson, go watch the other videos, they'll be in an iCard or in the description. And right before we get into this, I want to say if you find yourself enjoying this video at any point, I'd really appreciate if you could hit the like button and maybe even subscribe if you want. But anyways, you know the drill by now. Grab yourself a drink or a snack as we take a further dive down into the Call of Duty Zombies Iceberg. Mr. Peak's Gobblegums. I covered what Gobblegums were in the last Iceberg, and by now with their return to the Zombies franchise in Black Ops 6, I'm sure you also now know what they are. Last time I said that these magical gumballs were made by Dr. Monty, but this time it's now the infamous and equally mysterious Blue Bunny that's providing us the edge. The machines are similar to Monty's dispensers, but these are purple and silver instead of red and silver. And this one has a less inviting design overall, looking more sinister and sharp. Mr. Peaks clearly has more marketing budget than Monty because his machines have an advertising video built into it, and a catchy jingle. There's a lot of story implications this brings up considering how little we still know of Mr. Peaks, and the only conclusions I can think of for him manifesting these gobblegum machines out of nowhere with a whole ass advertising video. This guy's giving capitalism a run for its money with one machine.
So today we're speedrunning through Adventure Capitalist, a game that I really like because it's about making the most amount of money.
Is that he's either wanting our crew to get out to where they need to be and find Richtofen, or he's maybe doing it as a way to taunt us. He might just get his kicks out of giving us powerful stuff to give us hope, but knows we won't succeed anyway. Or he just wants to roll around in them sweet, sweet paper notes. Constant remakes. This was a well-known period of time that only recently stopped with Cold War, and hasn't reared up with Black Ops 6 yet. That, as the entry name implies, Zombies was getting constant remakes. Which at first sounds delightful. I'll take all of them, please. I love the older maps, and seeing them remade should give them a breath of fresh air, or the devs a chance to improve and expand them. But this came at the cost of new, fresh maps that could stand on their own, and doesn't need nostalgia to keep itself engaging. Naturally, fans would get hyped when these maps were announced, and then even when it came out, people had fun for a few days, until the nostalgia baiting wore off, and most people realised that there's a serious flaw in this constant map remaking process. I feel this one could be its own video since there's a lot to it, and maybe that should make it lower down on the iceberg by a tier or two, but it's such a widespread feeling that plagued all of BO4's Aether story, and even showed back up in Vanguard for a minute, before finally being squashed by Modern Warfare 3 Zombies. Although even that game reused a whole Warzone map, so make of that what you will. If anything, Black Ops 6 Zombies has brought us the most original Zombies experience in a while. Let's hope the next few DLCs aren't remakes that only make the map they're built upon worse and leave us disappointed. I'm not saying it can't be done right, nor am I saying it hasn't been done right, but I am saying it clearly didn't work and left a large number of players, both casual and hardcore alike, truly fatigued. What an odd time for the series that was. Black Ops 6 Zombie Encounters. In BO6 there's a feature that's been added that I love so much, and it's not like it's some big dick spectacle or anything, but it adds a lot more detail to the areas we're in. Around the maps you can see zombies that were already doing something else, such as eating a guy that simply got outplayed, couldn't ever be me, or trapped in a car where they would have turned. Once again, nothing special, but a feature I enjoy, and if you haven't noticed them, you definitely will now. Zombies in campaign. There have been several instances of zombies or zombies related stuff appearing in the campaigns across the Call of Duty games. Not that it really makes sense at all, except for Nova 6 in Black Ops 1, because for some reason in the more modern COD games we just can't have a separate story. Most of the time though, they were a little nudge and wink from the devs, and purely for fun. We've seen a ray gun in World at War from the unnerving statue Easter egg, a thunder gun in Black Ops 1, a zombie defense segment in Black Ops 3, a small appearance in Cold War if you keep Define Adler, and then in Black Ops 6, the undead have also made another appearance yet again. Wearable gear. In BO3 we saw the introduction of wearable gear in most of the maps. This was first introduced in Shadows of Evil, which I always forget about for some reason, where you could obtain a Okay, I'm pretty sure Google Docs auto-corrected Margwa to Margarita. You know what, we'll go with it. Margarita. A Margarita mask that would grant resistance to those blood-boiling Margwa slam attacks that gave me an embarrassing amount of round 2 game overs. When the player equips them, they are visible to others in your game, so they can either look really badass like the Dragon Wings in Gorod Krovi, or as ridiculous as the Margwa helmet. I mean seriously, you see someone walk up to you with the Margarita helmet on, and you're just going to assume they're going to say trick or treat. Across the maps, more and more were introduced, and they'd all have their own unique abilities that made getting them worth it. And you can swap them out at any time if there are multiple of them on the map, to suit your needs or you like. Alternate perk jingles. There are the classic perk jingles we all know and love, featured in literally every zombies map, including the machines, except for 2. One of them doesn't even have them, instead it's just a supernatural set of chimes, which I'm sure you've guessed by now is Mob of the Dead. The other map is Shadows of Evil. While it does have perk jingles, they're much different from the ones we're accustomed to. They have much greater, more grandiose music that 1940 Chicago was known for. The kind of crazy, bustling tunes you'd expect to hear in a Broadway musical or something.
Reach for juggernaut tonight, sugar seduction delight.
When you need to feel big and strong.
Reach for juggernaut tonight.
Unlike the original perk jingles that felt more old but gold type material. Let me know in the comments which ones you prefer. For you lurkers, this probably is going to start a war in the comments, so until the dust settles, duck down in the trench and cover your eyes. Shields. Everyone's favourite form of protection. The shield was a buildable piece of gear that we first saw in Black Ops 2 on Transit, and seeing that in the trailer made baby me lose my shit. A shield you can wear on your back that protects you from behind, and you can place it down? This item was revolutionary for the core mechanics of zombies to the point where it became an expected feature in a map. A shield would be available to you so long as you got the parts needed for it. The ability would change depending on what shield it was and on what map. The mounting idea on Transit was scrapped as quickly as it came out because unless you were doing them sneaky invincibility glitch spots, don't worry I won't snitch on you, it was kinda dull. Not really very useful and awkward to navigate around and place down. Why is its hitbox so big? We've gone on to see them have no extra abilities besides just the standard bash attack, a rocket powered charge forward, my personal favourite, a dragon mouth that shoots fireballs, and a gladiator weapon that can be used to shoot bullets when inserted into the shield. They've not been a staple in the game since BO4, and although we've had a shield wonder weapon in Vanguard, it wasn't the same utility type of equipment and took up a weapon slot. Classic and modern zombies. There has now become a clear divide in the modes that we've seen over time. The way Zombies is now is a similar result to how the mode started, but a different formula. Different priorities, goals, story, mechanics, and sense of progression. This change was right after Black Ops 4, as this game had many elements of the classic stuff from World at War to Black Ops 3, and also introduced lots of other stuff we see in the more modernized Zombies experience, such as Black Ops Cold War onwards. It's the kind of categorization you'll hear tossed around like litter in the UK when engaging with Zombies discussions, and does a good job at distinguishing what time period these games are in, as the mode has gone from survive as long as you can and lie to your friends about an unclimbable ladder, then to we gotta do the Easter eggs, get all the lore and story we can, leaving off at let's make the series as gameplay focused as possible. As of when I'm making this though, Black Ops 6 seems to be bringing back a more coherent story that is starting to pick up now, which is a refreshing return to form to see. Kinda feels like a mix between BO3 and Cold War. Death animations. And speaking of Black Ops 6, segues, am I right? Oh wait, no, we need to start at 2, not 6. There's a haunting detail that I was fond of in Black Ops 2, that when your character would get killed and the game would end, you would see them on their last legs, as they desperately reach out their hand in an effort to pick themselves up, to then have their bodies give in and go limp. Quite disturbing, not gonna lie. This came and went as soon as the next game came around, and for some reason, never came back. I guess it wasn't a priority, but I liked watching these people die. It was a good detail that retained some flavour in the delicious horror feel that the classic games had. It finally made its return in 6 Call of Duty Zombies modes later. In BO6, these have been refined to play one of the various animations when you die, and there's a lot of them to see. They are gruesome, and depending on what enemy kills you will depend on what animation plays. If a normal zombie kills you, they'll rip your arm off like a Mortal Kombat finisher. If it's a mangler, it'll turn you into a survivor skewer, and if it's one of them spider vermin things, it'll just eat your face off. Looks like they've been browsing the store and got some sick finishers. AI in zombies. Am I in a YouTuber apology video? Because I did not want to talk about this, but I also feel like it's super relevant and popular to zombies, and Call of Duty as a whole, and it's a big enough deal to be on the top of the iceberg here. The long and short of it is, Activision are using AI for art and voice acting in their game now. I enjoy Detroit Become Human as much as the next guy, but this isn't one of those stories. Their excessive and shameless use of AI in BO6 is not only diminishing the quality of their product, but the kicker, or should I say the butt kicker here, is that actual people, talented, hard-working people, such as artists and voice actors, are losing their jobs and being replaced with AI. The artists are replaced with AI generation, and the voice actors aren't being guaranteed protection against AI, which seems to imply that at some point down the line, there could be a not too distant future where voice actors are going to have their talent sampled by AI and then used without their consent, and as a result, they've pieced out, and rightfully so. No one wins here. The players, the employees, the company, or the quality of the product itself. And you would think that Activision would get the dub here because less work equals more money, but they don't, because it doesn't have the human touch that we crave so much in a lot of media. And the AI stuff feels soulless and lazy, so no one is going to want to buy or further financially support this, and I've watched enough Black Mirror to know how dystopian it is. I dread to think who's next, and hopefully there is no one next and this gets resolved, but it wouldn't surprise me if the writers were next on the chopping block. Not sure about anyone else, but just seeing all of this happening really sours my enjoyment of not only playing the game, but making videos on it. Which makes me glad the channel is starting to branch out with the Fallout and Berserk videos I've done anyway, but I guess all I can do is hope this won't snowball anymore, because it is starting to look like an avalanche is forming. Decoys play classic songs. When you're about to be suffocated by a horde in BO6 zombies, you'll most likely throw a decoy if you have one in a mad panic, so that you can live to see another round. The decoys in the series usually have some kind of sound that plays, and in the case for this time around, if you listen closely, you can hear one of the classic songs playing from the World at War and Black Ops 1 days, such as Lullaby for a Dead Man, The One, and 115. It's subtle, but you can hear it if you listen out.
Decoy live!
Mythology exists in zombies. So I've already spoken about the mythology in zombies, like the Origins robot names, and the Cthulhu type stuff, and even the Chaos story, which is full of mythology from famous tales of old, such as Perseus, Pegasus, and Medusa. But this entry is more about the implications of all that. In the Aether story, it's more cosmic Lovecraftian, but Chaos takes it to a whole new level, introducing mythology from our world and real life periods of time, and in that universe we play in, it actually exists. What's more, Vanguard gave us that radio talking about Alistair Rhodes and the Sentinel artifact existing in the Aether timeline, confirming that it's canon whether we like it or not, and they've doubled down on it in Black Ops 6, with our characters searching for that same Sentinel artifact that's seen through Scarlet and Co's journey. So if these universes are one and the same, then does that mean that Egyptian gods, Greek mythology, and Norse tales all exist? Or maybe some of it's real and some of it isn't? There's a chance of things existing like centaurs, minotaurs, and even Hades or something mad.
Enough of this boy.
The implications for this are massive, and maybe even lore-shattering, depending on how we see this get handled. It really makes you ask the important questions here, such as why did these almighty gods and demigods not interfere with any of the zombie stuff going on? We saw them do it before in the city of Delphi, so why not any other time? How powerful are some of these beings compared to people like Dr. Monty and the Shadow Man? Zombies talk. Although that would be a banging name for a COD Zombies podcast, it's not the case. Long ago in the battlefields of Nakdon-Toten, players that got close enough to zombies would hear their grunts and groans, until something caught people's attention. Zombies would swing at them, and it sounded like they were talking, saying Sam, or so we thought. What I find funny though is that you'll hear people say this was a thing in Nacht-der-Untoten and all of the other World at War maps. And even I would say this and I'm like, yeah, that makes complete sense. And we're right. Mostly. I seem to have found a bit of a zombies Mandela effect. I went to go and get some footage of the zombies in Nacht saying Sam, and what I found was that they actually never did. Not in Nacht anyway. Verrückt and Shinonuma, yeah they did. They even did in Doris, but I'm not counting that because that's when Samantha was established. I sat and listened to all of the sound files for the zombies in Nacht, and not once did that classic SAM sound effect come up. There is another sound the zombies make, and maybe you could interpret it as Sam, but it's not as distinct or as clear as the other one. So although I've always said, yeah, Nacht-der-Untoten, I remember the zombie noises when they would say Sam, there you have it, it seems like they actually didn't. And instead, we all most likely heard this on Verrückt and Shinonuma. Throughout the DLC cycle of World at War, just before Doris, players would pick up on these noises and wonder what they meant, speculating about a deeper meaning hidden within the simple wave shooter on forum posts, leading everyone to want to try and scoop up some kind of saucy secret story. Past the simplicity, it seems like the Treyarch devs noticed this and decided to expand upon their mode, adding more story and getting it to where it is now. So the name Samantha actually came from somewhere. Project Janus, a phrase you've most likely heard come up a lot during the Dark Aether story, and I'm gonna assume it's gonna keep coming up as the DLC season goes on for Black Ops 6, is the name of the entry. The details about Project Janus are kept vague, but we know that there are multiple people from Requiem that were in on it, and it's led by Richthofen. In the Forsaken ending, we see him get our operators and the core characters of Requiem put in the slammer. This seemed to be step one of the plan. Not much is known about it still, despite it coming up so much, but it's heavily implied that the rest of this plan is for Edward to gain control over the Dark Aether, and essentially be able to Gmod sandbox it and use it for whatever he wants, seemingly to keep Samantha Maxis trapped there and get his wife and son back. However he may go about doing that. Box luck. The mystery box is either beloved or infamous, depending on who you are and what experiences you've had with it. I don't know how I've been made to look a fool by a wooden box as many times as I have before, but here we are. The mystery box, as we know, gives you a weapon or sometimes equipment of varying usefulness. It contains a lot of stinkers, and whilst it is all down to luck, as far as we know, there seems to have been several instances where the box has either given very specific things that are required or are a constant stream of bad stuff. For example, there are some people that think if you do all the Easter eggs in BO3, you'll have way better box luck by getting wonder weapons and fat LMGs. A similar thing applies here, but some think it's to do with if you don't play the game for a while, and then hop into Revelations for example, you'll be showered in the best guns in the game. You'll hit the box, you'll get a thunder gun, then an Apothicon servant, then Lil Arnie's, and then a nice dingo to keep you going. I have experienced this before when I don't play Black Ops 3 Zombies for a while and then I'll go on to the game, and I am treated like a sugar baby. I'm getting all of the best stuff in the game from the box consistently. I don't know, I'm sure it's all pure coincidence, but I'm not the only one that's thought this, and if you think not playing the game or doing all the Easter eggs or anything has something to do with box luck, let me know down below. Besides the teddy bear permaperk in Buried that genuinely did give you better box luck, I mostly believe that the box is strictly an RNG fest, but like I said, I've noticed that when I have a match on Black Ops 3 for the first time in a long time, I do get good stuff straight away. Rumours would always come and go saying that if you did this or that, it'd be able to flip your fortune. But you know how talk like this goes in Zombies by now, it was just that. Talk. Zombies leaks. As is tradition with every single Call of Duty game, it's almost a guarantee that we're going to experience leaks from game files or straight from the hive at Treyarch Studios. At this point, whatever rumours you can imagine, there's probably been a leak that's claimed it was going to be in the game or was meant to exist in some way. We've had the classic Zombies Chronicles 2, generic map leaks for upcoming DLC seasons of whatever game was new at the time, and even a Zombies standalone game that was allegedly supposed to happen some time ago. There's always something going around, whether they be true, false, or remain in ambiguity. Exploding zombies. This one isn't about the exploding zombie heads like you might think. So in Cold War and BO6, I'm not sure about Vanguard to be honest, please don't make me play it. There are instances of zombies being killed where they'll just Explode. It seems to be triggered a lot whenever you melee kill them, and an explosion of blood follows. It's fairly common and you've probably noticed it and not thought about it much, but when you stop and focus on what's actually happening, it's definitely strange. I'm not sure why this happens. Maybe it's a hardware limitation thing, where they can't show zombie corpses because it'll be too many assets in the game, so they just make them get blown up like a meatball in a microwave. And if that's the case, at least it's saving your PC from being blown up. Drawing war weapons. In Buried, which is by far one of the most interesting and unique zombies maps we've had, enough said, where much like Transit, it really embraces the sandbox aspect of the mode. It goes far enough with the idea that it lets you draw most of the war weapons at certain spots around the map by using a white chalk. It's interesting because of how this makes no sense, as we know that the war weapons are controlled by higher power, and our characters are out here playing Scribblio. We've never seen this feature return as of 2024, and I think this would have been a good idea for Outbreak or something. Zombies cereal. Yep, Call of Duty Zombies cereal. It's real. I'm not clowning around. It was advertised during the Modern Warfare 3 marketing for the return of zombies before it came out. It's these little vanilla flavoured nuggets with a hint of coconut, and the box has some simplistic, cartoony art of a monkey bomb clanging his cymbals together because he most likely realised how surreal this all is. I still haven't told you the best part though. It's that the box glows in the dark, showing an X-ray shot of the toasted monkey bomb as it explodes with the boom part of the clang clang boom sign lit up too. I've never tried it, unfortunately, so I can't tell you how it tastes, although if I did buy it, that would be the wildest business expense ever. Hidden Pack-a-Punch effects. For as long as time has existed, Pack-a-Punching a gun has always meant giving it a flat damage increase, and maybe some extra attachments depending on the game you're playing. But to this day, there are some weapons that have hidden abilities that you wouldn't have expected them to have, making upgrading them much more interesting. Some of these include upgrading the crossbow in Black Ops 1 that will give it explosive bolts that when fired will act as a mini monkey bomb, drawing zombies in and then exploding. The ballistic knife has always given the person using the PAPT version the ability to shoot the little knives out at a downed player to instantly pick them up.
Yeah, bitch!
Upgrading the starting pistol most of the time will give it explosive bullets, such as upgrading the 1911 to give you the iconic Mustang and Sally. Wonder Waffle. No, you're not dyslexic. The entry does say waffle, not waffer. This one comes from an old World at War quote said by Dempsey when obtaining the Wonder Waffle. This one comes from an old World at War quote said by Dempsey when obtaining the Wonder Waffle DG2 in Shinonuma. He says, "What the hell's a Wonder Waffle?" It's a silly bit of wordplay and has stuck with people since as a nickname for it. In fact, it became so widely spread and it's such a subtle spelling change that there are people that unironically think it's called the Wonder Waffle. And if you're one of those people watching this video, that's probably hit the same as finding out Santa isn't real. Black Ops 1 character hands. There's a small detail in this game that I remember noticing, then keeping this information in my brain and doing absolutely nothing with it. Until today, our characters Dempsey, Takeo, Nikolai and Richtofen are wearing vastly different uniforms compared to what we see of their hands in a first-person view. The most accurate is Dempsey, since we can see he doesn't have any gloves or accessories on his hands, with the only real inaccuracy being that he has a green t-shirt on instead of seeing his sleeves rolled up on his marine shirt. These hands are from Mason's model on the campaign mission Payback. Nikolai doesn't have gloves on, but in first person we see these tattered hobo gloves and puffed out sleeves that don't match the coat he's wearing. It's actually the Vorkuta outfit from the legendary campaign mission of the same name, where we meet Reznov again. Takeo has these hand wraps when once again this isn't the case for his character model, which has his long sleeved Imperial jacket on and no hand wraps anywhere. This is from one of the NVA soldiers in multiplayer. Next is Richtofen, which is fairly inoffensive like Dempsey's, showing his black gloves and tan coloured uniform, although it looks more baggy than it actually is on his model. The hands we see are from the campaign on the hazmat suit that would also go on to be used in BO2, where we actually play as the CDC. Fun fact, when I was a little baby fetus playing Black Ops 2 for the first time and I went on town, I remember spawning in as the CDC and seeing these gloves and the rest of the arms, and for a little bit I thought I was playing as Richtofen, because in Black Ops 1 the hands are the exact same. Panzer grabs zombies. Whilst running away from the Panzer and trying not to get your cheeks pinched by its comically large claw, if you're lucky and manage to dodge it or it misses you, if there's a zombie in range, it will actually actually grab onto it and pull it in to flame cook his face off.
You're making me mad!
There is no purpose for this, simply just another classic example of Treyarch's attention to detail. Gobblegum flavour. Much like the chemically altered beverages, gobblegums are brimming with head-turning flavours, from what we can assume anyway. Since I'm sad to report there isn't much info given as to how these balls taste. From the few quotes we get about them is that they're not pleasant, no matter who's having them or what gobblegum it is. We have Dempsey pointing out this lack of joy on the taste buds as he can be heard saying,
Unusual flavor. Can't quite put my finger on it. Oh yeah, it tastes like ass.
Other characters don't seem to be racing to get their tongues around these balls either.
The taste is certainly, unusual. Perhaps it is acquired.
They couldn't have been as bad as the elixirs though, as Takio states at some point in Blood of the Dead that he misses the gobblegums.
I never thought I would say this, but I missed the gum.
The most accurate thing we have as to what flavour they actually are is that one of them tastes like carpet, apparently. My mouth feels dry just thinking about it, so let's move on. Moving gobblegum dispensers. Damn it, we're still talking about these gums. When my future grandchildren ask me to tell them about Black Ops 3 Zombies, I'm sure they'd be surprised to learn that gobblegums were in fact not always where they are now, that being everywhere. The way they used to work back at launch was similar to the mystery box, where after enough spins, it would eventually move. As the lights flash red and it deactivates, leaving you gobblegumless. If you wanted more, you'd have to go and find the working machine around the map. This was terrible, especially because there was no light beacon like the box had to tell you roughly where it was. Wait until they find out it used to cost 500 points to spin. Out of bounds laugh. In a lot of the Treyarch Zombies games, there are certain maps where if you no-clip out of bounds, Samantha will notice and begins laughing at you repeatedly. This is because you've entered a death barrier, so you're not meant to be there, and the game knows you're not meant to be there, and Samantha definitely knows you're not meant to be there, and is basically mocking you. So if you're actively playing and do this, you'll be instantly killed as she basically pisses herself. The takeaway here is, don't try and go behind an almighty corrupt girl's back. It's as creepy as ever, and we'll be coming back to this laugh in particular soon. Found footage in menu. In the Giga Chad Black Ops 1 menu, you'll quickly notice a bunch of screens that show events of the campaign and other Vietnam and Cold War type imagery, until you switch to the zombies menu and you see the media start changing. More hellish imagery will show, and some of it is in the style of found footage, such as the Pentagon security cameras picking up zombies and Nova crawlers showing up around the halls, some actual live action stuff of what looks to be people being experimented on, and so on. It hits the tone of the covert, morbid, realistic nature, and being sat there in the chair, surrounded by the thick, grim aura, hypes you up to dive into one of the nightmares. Mob of the Dead characters lived in Morgue City. We have evidence to suggest that our 4 prisoners in Mob of the Dead actually lived in the infamous Morgue City. I've covered the laundry ticket cipher in the last Iceberg, and to bring that up again for the sake of this entry, we know that the name of the ticket is addressed to a Sal DeLuca. Not only that, but if you take a look around at Quick Revive, you can see a sign on the storage building saying DeLuca Shipping, which is where he would have kept all of his fresh goods to ship and sell so that he can keep a clean nose to the general public, and the law whilst he worked on his real business, the crime one. This guy thinks he's Walter White or something. That's one of them checked off then. We can also see a place within Shadows called O'Leary's Bar and Lounge, which is the business Finn O'Leary owned, and speaking of owned businesses, behind the Gobblegum machine and next to the KRM Wallby sits Al's Barbers. Not really sure if this one is connected to the Al Arlington that we know, as Albert was a very common name back then, but it's worth throwing in anyway. But if that isn't a reference to our Weasel, then we do have some quotes from Jackie Vincent himself, the corrupt cop in Morgue City, that outright confirms that he knows, or at least has heard of some of the mobsters.
I once busted a little weasel who tried to use one of these to blast open a bank safe. Dumbass nearly blew himself up. Could have used this when I busted Sal's liquor joint. Finn O'Leary's whiskey tasted better than this shit. What is this? One of Billy Handsome's trophies?
Which makes Billy and Weasel checked off on our list too. So I think there's more than enough proof that the mobsters lived in Morgue City before they were sent off to the Rock. CIA and CDC. A place in Nevada can't just get blown to smithereens and not have the officials try and do absolutely nothing about it. During Black Ops 2's Nuketown Zombies, we play as the CIA or CDC NPC that were sent to investigate what the hell's going on around here with the explosion that went off. The one that happened whilst Broken Arrow were drilling 115 and it kaboomed. We also see them in Bus Depot, Town and Farm, which I think is just for the sake of having nameless characters that aren't our main crew on survival. It's probably nothing more. I will say, an explanation for my fellow lore nuts out there is that the surviving CIA and CDC left were investigating the strange ongoings around Greenrun and other places in general, like the denizens, zombies, and signs of Maxis communicating to survivors through electricity. They might have even have caught wind of the flesh, and maybe just looking for any survivors too, I guess. Black Ops 1 Mule Kick. Mule Kick is on every Black Ops 1 map, but it never used to be. You actually have to be connected to the online servers to get the update for the game to be able to have Mule Kick in every map. Even the base ones, Kino and 5, besides Moon, which would be there due to the perk being built into the map anyway. So if you don't log on to Xbox Live or PSN, then no Mule Kick for you, which is fine. I can live without Mule Kick. Does anyone need Mule Kick in their life? If they did this to Stamina Up though, then we riot. VR11. Yeah, just the VR11. It's on here not because it's some secret or something, but because it exists. This weapon, from its design to its concept and even its ammo, is weird as hell. First off, the design. It looks alien in nature, and I know we've had the Fisty Squid 6000, but this was before a lot of the Lovecraftian stuff was introduced, and even then, it doesn't look like it necessarily fits one group. I wouldn't think Group 935 would have made this by looking at it, nor would I think the Ascension group or Broken Arrow would have done. It's truly the black sheep of the Wonder Weapons. Then there's its ability. The VR11 when shot will fire a red electric bolt at a zombie which will end up curing them back to being a human, turning them into the exact model of the CIA agent that I mentioned earlier, with the same glasses and signature suit and tie, and that yee-ass haircut. They'll run around in a panicked frenzy as the zombies will run to them like flies around shit. Once again, jarring. Besides the one step for the Easter egg and the occasional panic shot that might save you, it's not really a weapon as you'd commonly define one. Like, even as I'm typing this down on docs, it's making even less sense to me, and now as I'm speaking that, it still isn't clicking. It can be used to calm George Romero down when he's shot with it, and it can give other players a zombie blood type of effect. It makes no sense, and I love it. The ammo. It's theoretically the cure. I'm sure the CIA agent thing is most likely a character model reused, since it would be a lot of work to make a bunch of them, so Trout picked the most normal looking one and rolled with it. You've got to remember after all that Call of the Dead did have a lot of technical limitations, so it wouldn't surprise me. If that's not the case, then that's even stranger. But back to the ammo, if it's not turning them specifically into CIA agents, then it is curing zombies and turning them back to human, straight up. Why do we not see more of whatever this magic cure is showing up anymore? Is there a limited supply? Primus used the giant robot. I actually mentioned this in the second Iceberg, which feels like a lifetime ago now. Where has the time gone? And I'm covering it now in its own entry here for more detail. What we see in the Der Eisendrache cutscene is a giant robot chasing the German soldiers down, which must look terrifying from their point of view, because I never knew these things could sprint. The metallic hardware man gets shot down via a rocket launcher, and our boys step out from it. There's a theory that's more and more plausible the more you think about it, and is true to me, stating that the crew managed to pilot this robot to get to the castle in the first place. Might sound weird to imagine them piloting this robot, or how they would have even have gotten it in the first place anyway, but if you cast your mind back to the last place they canonically were, it's the giant, but I'm not giving you points for that one. In the facility resides a slumbering robot, broken and awaiting someone in the cockpit. It's not a stretch to assume that Richtofen would obviously be more familiar with how these things work, or at least how to be able to get blueprints to fix one up, and that's presumably what he and the others did to be able to trek over to Austria. It also adds up when you take into consideration that the rest of the group would be somewhat familiar with the steel giants themselves, as they had practice going in and out of them during Origins. Zombies maps are real life places. We've seen a variety of IRL places that we can instantly tell the map is set in, such as Voyage of Despair being on the Titanic, a real ship, and Mob of the Dead being set in Alcatraz. But there's even more you might not have thought about. Nuketown Zombies, and obviously the multiplayer map it came from, is a real concept called a Doomtown, where the US government would set up fake towns for the purpose of seeing the effects of nuclear weapons with a scaled, semi-real town for a more accurate picture. And you better believe it has goddamn mannequins. Nocturne Toten is a destroyed airfield base that, although there isn't one real-life location specifically, as far as I'm aware, looking at a real one then looking at Nacht shows how similar they are. Ascension looks to be the, and I'm so sorry about the pronunciation, Baikonur Cosmodrome, which I believe used to belong to the Soviets and was for launching rockets much like we see in Ascension, when we turn on the power and unlock Pack-a-Punch. Kina de Toten is based off of the real-life Central Park Theater in Chicago. And I've gotta say, just looking at those stairs makes me want to cause myself a spinal injury. The last one I'll cover is Bielitz Heilstatten Hospital, which I'm sure you can already tell what map was inspired from this just by looking at it. It's Verrückt. This harrowing building was an old hospital that was formerly used for treating tuberculosis. Then during 1916, this was ominously the hospital that Hitler recuperated in after battle during World War I. Given what we know about Verrückt being a Nazi experimentation facility during World War II, there's something chilling about that. It was eventually taken over by the Red Army and used as a military hospital. It's said that the place is haunted due to a lot of death paired with bad events that happen there, alongside the eerie aura the place presents, and it's said that there were ghosts seen around the halls. There was even a serial killer there by the alias the Beast of Bielitz that would prey on women there in the 80s and 90s. To make matters worse, a model was also murdered there by her photographer in 2008, making this place a long spool of tragic history. Verrückt came out in 2009, so if this is where it's based upon, they had plenty of tragic and unsettling stories and visuals to draw from. Verrückt Fountain Secret. Look at that eerie Verrückt statue. I can confirm that it's a fountain, but there's something hiding underneath it you'd never expect to be there. It can only be found by no-clipping underneath the fountain, and it's a deployable MG42 on an untextured pure black pillar. What is this?
I can't tell what this is.
It's important to note that on World at War you can't find this type of gun anywhere else in Zombies. There'll probably be comments saying, actually you can get it from the box. And what I mean is there's no way we can deploy the gun on its bipod like we see here, despite it being in the name. You can actually use this one from underneath the stone statue too, and I find that amusing because it is silly and goofy. The reason why this is here is clearly just some testing thing that was left over and was swept underneath the map, but it's so out of place anyway. Here's where it gets weirder. The same fountain, or should I say it's slightly different because it's a lady this time, some kind of robed woman, whereas in the original it's just a cross. Don't sweat it right now though, we'll get into this much later in the Iceberg. But anyways, the fountain in the Zombies Chronicles remaster is also hiding one of these things, but it looks different and much more detailed. The pillar is actually textured now, and I swear the MG itself looks like the textures are higher quality than it did in the previous game. And the biggest standout, there are severed hands that look more human to me than zombie latched onto the weapon. It's so strange that it's still there and it's clearly been added to, but I'd say when you step back and look at this, it's more likely Treyarch adding this back in as an Easter egg to those who knew about the other one back in World at War and are embracing the absurdity. Coast map. If you look into Reese inside the room where the two brain jars can be found for the Easter egg song, there's a board with tiny photos on it that you need to squint to really make out. If you concentrate on them, you'll see that one looks just like that place in Siberia where George Romero went sicko mode, and there was Danny Trejo and Sarah Michelle Gellar, Wait a minute. That's right, it's Call of the Dead, shown to have been planned as far back as the Reese. We know that Kina de Toten was supposed to be DLC 4, and we do also see the Paris map that was planned for Black Ops 1 where Moon would have been here, but it's interesting to know that we also had Call of the Dead planned for this game too apparently, by the file name of zombies_coast. Much like the Paris map that was covered, it was supposed to be in World at War, but due to the launch of Modern Warfare 2, Activision didn't want to drive attention away from their newest release, and their resources were needed towards Treyarch's next title later down the line, Black Ops 1. Crazy to think about what the timeline would be like where Modern Warfare 2 was pushed back, and how it would have been for zombies. Hammer breaking Black Ops 2. I hate this one so much, but looking back on it, it was funny as hell. On Black Ops 2 Zombies, whilst playing split screen, by the way, does anyone actually play split screen anymore? I hope so. If one of the players gets the Hammer LMG and starts spamming it, it would chug the game's performance into the ground, and then to the Earth's core. A 2-year-old could count higher than the amount of frames the game would drop to. When the gun stopped firing, it would go back to normal. But me and my friends used to make it a rule when playing to ban the hammer from being used, about as fast as a fuse getting banned in the hostage game mode on Rainbow Six Siege. Nacht Moon Size. This one's more of a mystery to me than anything else. When you think of Nocturne Toten, what comes to mind? I can't hear you or read your mind, so let's assume you said the giant moon. Like, look at the size of it. It's so intrusive on your eyes that you can't not notice it looming over you like you're on the final day in Majora's Mask. The most straightforward answer would be, well, it's an atmospheric choice that's supposed to set the scene for the vibe you'll be getting when playing the map. But I also can't help but think it's strange. Why on earth is the moon so close to you? Given everything that ended up coming in the zombies lore and story beats we've seen, you could speculate that Nacht may be some kind of weird apocalypse, but I think it's unlikely. It's a weird observation that I don't think had much thought put into it from a lore perspective at all, and it doesn't have to. But it's a strange observation once you stop to actually take it in, making it worthy of being about here on the Iceberg. But given the actual attention to detail we've seen throughout the series, I think it highly likely Treyarch had their cake and ate it too. Not only by their scenic feel going hard, but it also being an actual illusion caused by the moon looking way bigger sometimes than it's meant to, due to it being lower in orbit. So it does make some sense logically, and the devs took it to the extreme to make Nacht look truly spooky. It's an unusual size, and it's kinda weird. Liquid Divinium in Origins. The generators in Origins are powered by a blue liquid that looks identical to Liquid Divinium that we see in Black Ops 3, to be able to blow on gambling for gobblegums. It makes sense that this is in fact Liquid Divinium, as we know that it's some kind of distilled 115 that can power said machines like we use in Dr. Monty's factory, the vats that spin those gobblegums for us. So it checks out perfectly that it was being used by 935 to more efficiently power their own tech. Considering the currency for spinning these vats is Liquid Divinium, it makes sense that this energy efficient way of powering these machines in France is the same thing that we're using to power the machines for the gobblegums, and honestly maybe even the rest of Dr. Monty's factory. So whenever we spin the gobblegum vats to get some balls for our mouths, there's actually a lore reason for it being Liquid Divinium. Zombie pods in Shangri-La. I mentioned the pods that we've seen in Kino de Totem before, with the zombies that are frosted in these little containers and being stored in the Group 935 base. If you don't think that zombies is wacky enough to have more zombies also secretly stored and contained within the mountains of Shangri-La, then you haven't been paying attention. They are in fact there as well, within the mines area, where we see animals that are being cut open for science, I guess, and fragments of 115 rock placed around, as well as the infamous pods that are hard to miss. Makes you wonder how many zombies they had frozen in the rest of their facilities. We still don't have the purpose of these lunchable sized zombie pods stored away in the theatre and now the Shangri-La mountains, but we can assume it's to weaponize them for whenever they're needed. They're all just piled up in mass, and look as haunting as ever. Civil Protector bleeds. Here's a fun detail that's a little bit unsettling and definitely obscure enough to be down here. When you build the Civil Protector in Shadows of Evil, he'll do his thing of helping you out and then disappearing to get some oil. That's what he told me anyway. He's coming back, right? When you go up to him and knife him, for whatever reason, he'll bleed. Obviously there's no lore behind this, unless he's in a FNAF 3 Springtrap situation. It's nothing worth throwing a fit over, but I find it interesting. Dr. Monty's disappearance. This is in reference to that time in Zombies where Dr. Monty was built up to be a coy, strange, and surprisingly helpful force of nature in Gorod Krovi. A helper from beyond the mortal realm, to then a sociopath only concerned with keeping his own world alive, showing his true colours and confirming he's not as shiny of a shoe as it once looked in the store window. In fact, it's covered in dog shit. He's evil. What were our characters going to do about it, and where will we see him next? Well, we have no idea, because he's gone. He pulled a Houdini and left to grab some gobblegums. Or at least that's what he told me anyway. Oh no. But really though, out of all of the things in the zombie storyline that are genuinely worth being confused about, this one stands as tall as a titan. He had so much build up for 2 whole games, starting with the mysterious machines that gave you powerful gumballs with his name on it, was then deemed one of the most important factors of the story that changed the way we looked at everything, and I literally mean that. Then he got bored and retired, I guess? It's as though he got blacklisted from a story he was a huge part in. It's that jarring, and it's something that's still not given a proper explanation, and he came in with such veracity and importance that his absence was noticed hard. It gets even more confusing when you realise that he stopped appearing at the climax of the story too. The explanation you'll hear is that Primus were doing stuff behind his back, and that is somewhat passable, but not really though. And it's not a satisfying explanation either, as in Alpha Omega, the second to last map of the entire Aether storyline that we see him in, he caught on to what Primus and Artemis were doing, and he game-ended Maxis, so we had to have known something was up. It's not like our characters just called Lester and were magically off his radar.
Can't handle the heat, my friend? Okay, Leave it with creepy Uncle Lester.
He knew they were up to something, and if our characters were straight up trying to actually trick and deceive a god, then you'd think he'd do something or show up somewhere, right? So it only leaves this one question. Why did he take such a backseat that he fell off the chair? Some think it was because of the rumours of the infamous budget cut that Treyarch took when making BO4. If that's true, then they wouldn't have been able to have hired Malcolm McDowell, Monty's glorious voice actor, who you might know from stuff like Castlevania and Elden Ring, and lots of other stuff. This guy is everywhere. If it's not a budget thing, then maybe it's a time thing, that they apparently had to rush the story and simply didn't have the development time to wrap up so many loose ends. I could see that being possible, as there were supposed to be more DLCs. Once again, take this with a pinch of salt. Black Ops 4 was considered a failure because of how much Treyarch were taking on for zombies alone, having 2 storylines, 4 maps at launch, and the stress of ending one story and starting up another. I'm curious, what do you think the reason for the scarf-wearing god's absence is? This door is opened elsewhere. Another more fun one here. When you go to a certain door in Revelations, you'll get the message, this door is opened elsewhere. This seems like nothing at first, simply being told that you can't open this door. So stop, but it actually might be a reference to the game Quake, which comes up with the exact same message whilst playing, and the area is then unlocked once you go off and do something somewhere else. Phoebe. Whilst Peter McCain and Dempsey are talking to one another in some Alpha Omega dialogue, Dempsey wants to know if this mechanical man he's talking to really is Peter, his old Marine friend, by asking him to say something only the two of them would know. And we get this.
That really you, McCain? I gotta know for sure. Tell me something only the two of us would know.
You sure you want me to do that, Tank? We go way back. I can embarrass the heck out of you if I wanted to.
Okay, let's keep it cryptic. Me and Phoebe. Sum it up in 3 words.
I forgive you.
Can't say I'm surprised. However mad you were at the time, I knew you'd come around. You've always been the forgiving type.
Man, sweet. See how I didn't embarrass you by telling everyone exactly who Phoebe is?
Dempsey name drops a girl called Phoebe, and when asked to sum it up in 3 words, Peter says bluntly, I forgive you. Dempsey says that he knew he'd come around, he's the forgiving type after all, and it's left there. Whatever it is, it seems like it's luckily genuinely behind them, but as an obvious guess worded for monetization's sake, it seems like Peter met a girl named Phoebe who took interest to him. Maybe they were even going out, and let's just say she probably reached for his juggernog that night, or maybe it was something much less zesty, and maybe Phoebe was the name of some kind of object or keepsake that Peter had, and Dempsey ruined it somehow. Who knows really, as Peter makes it clear that he didn't specify who she was to him. But personally, I think it was the first theory, as the general tone of the conversation seems to hint towards it. Thanks, I'll take my media literacy degree and be on my way. Lurking around. Coming in with a Call of Duty World War II entry, which I bet you completely forgot about that game. Do you remember World War II zombies? There was an achievement that couldn't be tracked all that easily and was down to random chance, and it actually freaked me out a bit when I found it for the first time. It involves you stumbling across Dr. Straub, the main antagonist of the game, standing out of bounds somewhere in the map, lurking around and watching you closely, before then walking away back into the shadows. Once he disappeared, you'd get your achievement. It's creepy as hell, and you know what? Sledgehammer didn't do a bad job with things like that, as he has that look of a deeply deranged scientist that would want to replace your insides with whale organs or something. Doesn't help that he looks nearly identical to the Pentagon Thief, so it felt like the past came back to haunt me again. Go away, Pentagon Thief. Personalized cells. There's a detail on Tag der Toten you can seek out that I love. If you go to the specimen storage and snoop around the cells, you can quickly pick up on who belonged in each room. For example, we see a Japanese propaganda poster hung up with writing that says, I wish I could undo what I have done. I wish I could restore honor to the Masaki name. This one obviously belongs to Ultimus Takio. In another, we see, if Dr. Sauerkraut thinks he can break me, he's got another thing coming.
Semper Fi.
This isn't from Frank Corrigan, it's from our favourite Marine, Dempsey. The last one has drunkenly scribbled on the wall, Vodka Tonight. Don't think I need to say who this cell belonged to. This was during the time the 3 were sent to Siberia to be tested on with 115 even further, and now we get to know where they were being held and can read upon little pieces of their thought processes at such a vulnerable and painful time in their lives. Stalin fears Nikolai. What also sticks out to me that's written on the alcoholic's wall is the sentence, "Did you know Stalin himself fears me?" That is why he put me on the front line. He thought he could kill Nikolai. This could be his own drunken delusions, sure, but also it could be true. The World at War character bios mention that he was a force to be reckoned with, and quickly rose through the ranks by killing the next man in line. It only makes sense that he would eventually be too close to the top for Stalin's liking, and so he had to send him out on a death or glory charge, hoping to dispose of him. But he keeps surviving, so it does have some credit going for it. If that is actually true, that's so badass. The leader of the Soviet Union was that afraid of one guy that he actively tried to get him killed, but he kept coming back, inching closer to him every time. If none of this zombie stuff happened, he might have been able to have caught up to him eventually and axed him out of his position. And I mean actually axed him. Damn, I feel like I've been severely sleeping on Nikolai. Guy's a Patrick Bateman force of nature. Infinite Warfare Zombies sequel. Looking back on IW Zombies feels like a distant memory now, and then I realise it is. That game came out about 8 years ago. This project never got a sequel despite the devs doing an overall solid job of the mode. Lee Ross actually stated before that a follow-up was in planning and development. However, it got swiftly swept under the rug. The official reason, I guess you could say, given is because of the more realistic focus that Activision were wanting to stir towards, and so an Infinite Warfare 2 just wouldn't quite fit that criteria. That game was far from realistic, especially the zombies. You know, we had Jon Snow Space Boogaloo, guns that shoot actual laser beams, and 4 people getting sucked into a horror film by an incel director. But a more unofficial reason that I don't think would ever really get said, and makes a little too much sense, was everyone's dislike towards the game and zombies mode on that game at the time. Too thirsty for Treyarch's continuation after the resounding success of BO3. The issue was most likely not the game itself, although it did have some issues, but specifically when it came out. Due to the backlash that hit harder than an alcoholic stepfather, this got over 3 million dislikes. I think it's safe to say Activision decided against Infinite Warfare Zombies 2. This sequel was supposed to be set in hell. Doom fans have probably got blue balls right now after hearing that. It was also supposed to merge the 2 stories together, making the Aether story and Infinite Warfare story connected in the form of Treyarch's maps that would have been past films that Willard Wyler would have made. If this is a spin-off, that's a fun what if, but if Lee Ross wanted that to be canon, that would have been horrible, I'm gonna be honest. If it was to be a fun, non-canon, light spin-off though, I could just tell that all the characters working together to literally steamroll through hell would have been gnarly. Since Lee Ross's days at Infinity Ward are behind him now, and the overall direction Zombies has taken has changed, we're most likely never gonna see this. Misty's Bite. I'm not gonna lie, this one takes me back. This series has covered so many theories now that are downright insane, but you know what? This one isn't too bad, and we can look back at it now and not feel like complete idiots. Misty's character model has a nasty looking bite mark on her waist. It might not even be one, but even looking at it now, it could always be a scratch, although it's generally agreed upon that it's a bite. Misty simps are really getting out of control now. Biting? Man. As was second nature back then, people came up with the idea that this was indeed a flesh goblin that bit her, meaning that she could turn into one herself. Although the classic rule of zombie bites person, so person becomes zombie, doesn't apply to this series as far as we know. But you could also argue that over time, the 115 exposure from the zombies could actually cause them to turn anyway. The rules about this are foggy even now, if you can't tell. So back in the CallOfDutyZombies.com days, any guess was good enough. People ran with that idea, and the situation kept escalating as her wound was never shown to be healing over time. Then we received one of the best maps of all time. Don't fight me on this because what's true is true. Buried. When you spawn in as Misty, one of her quotes would be,
Somehow, I don't think that wound's gonna heal easily.
Admittedly, that's an odd quote given what we know, and I do understand where people were coming from, until you take a few steps forward and realise that it's a figure of speech for the Goliath of a hole in the ground. All the characters comment on it at some point or another, and it's a huge factor in why our crew are even here in the first place. It was a cool theory at the time, but I think once Buried was all said and done and the survivors' tales were wrapped up, it was easy to toss away. Looking back, it wasn't up to Poyo's standards, but it was fun. It was never brought up at all, or hinted towards from transit through to buried, and then that one quote that it could have been referring to is clearly not about the farm girl, then yeah, it's going about as far as a drunk in a maze. Like I said earlier, fun at the time, and a favourite theory of mine due to how believable it was until the conclusion of Buried. So Misty Simps, don't worry, she's not gonna die. Samantha's laugh origin. I told you we'd come back to it, and here we are. This time looking at the actual laugh itself and finding out where it came from, where did it go, where did it come from, because we just don't know. Kind of. Over time, various sources have come up showcasing Samantha's laugh sound effects being used before it was ever put into COD Zombies. The first one is her Out of Bounds laugh, which I said we'd revisit, which is also the same one that happens when you get a teddy bear out of the box and it moves, pretty much the game giving you a big middle finger to suck on. There's a YouTube video you can find from Twinsies. Somehow these names never fail to baffle me. Twinsies was watching the film, I don't know how she does it. It's some comedy about a single mum or something. I've never watched it, but there is something I do recognise from it. Because Twinsies, when they were watching it, they heard the infamous giggle and decided to grab their camera to record the thing that triggered their PTSD episode that they most likely had.
Bye-bye, bunny. Bye-bye, mama. Oh my god!
Hearing this outside of anything other than Call of Duty Zombies is deeply uncanny to me, as a guy that's heard it way more times than a normal person should, which is making my brain act like a smoking toaster trying to separate the noise from COD, so my input might not be much help here. But it sounds like this is a separate sound effect used and was dubbed over the baby. The way it sounds, compared to what's going on screen, doesn't seem to fit right. But once again, maybe it's too weird for my mind to try and separate. However, why don't we look at when the film came out? If this really is the origin, then if the film came out earlier, surely then we'll know if it's the true origin of the laugh. Which came first? 2011. And World at War? 2008. 3 years earlier than the supposed origin of the sound effect. Meaning this has to be a sound effect that was edited over. Okay, so surprise future me editing this. There is a really obscure video I've just found of this Samantha laugh being used in real life. Just take a look at this obscure video with 1K views titled Zombies Samantha's Laugh by a channel called DC.
Why are we even doing this? This is a weird sounding toy. Justin, can you press the button for me? Or not? A weird toy. Here. Does this sound familiar? I poke you and you cry.
Justin clearly couldn't handle what was about to come. This being used in a toy is further proof to me that it's one of those random, royalty-free sound effects. Well, let's put a pin in this, again, because we're going to lump it together with the other laugh we hear that seems to be pointing towards the same place. Samantha also has another laugh. The very first time we hear her laugh, actually. The beginning of it all. This one is juicier than the last laugh, as there are a few places this one can be found, confirming it most likely is a sound effect, such as the MMORPG EverQuest 2, where it's used for a skeleton sound. There's also a clip from Back to the Future 2 that I'll just let this one play.
Footballs don't work on water unless you've got power!
Yeah man, that was my reaction too when I first heard that. While she might think this to be the smoking gun to one of our mystery laughs, it's slightly different. I was skulking around the comments section of the video compiling these sources by Alec Heroes, and saw a comment saying there's a Hollywood sound effect library that houses a bunch of stock sound effects. I stumbled upon this mountain of noises ranging from screams to sneezes to oh. After filtering through them and some godly keyword searching, I managed to find our sound effect for this second laugh. Although I can't trace the first chuckle from when the box moves, it's clear that it is a stock sound effect. And here I managed to dig up the other ones, so case closed. We have answers to some of the most iconic yet infuriating noises in gaming. Claymores kill zombies faster. Amongst the speedrunning community, this seems to be a nifty little trick that's used to optimize Origins runs and dispose of the dead quicker. The method isn't actually about using the claymores, but instead using the ice staff to build up damage, and as the zombies are getting frozen, you whip out the claymore and hold them. Just hold them. This, for some reason, speeds up the freezing animation time of the zombies so they die quicker, meaning you can save significant time during a high round run. This has got to be a bug, as it makes absolutely no sense to be in the game. As a guess, I would say this happens due to the game knowing you're about to place a claymore, and so wants to kill the zombies faster to get rid of the extra assets on the map, as you're about to place another one down in order to avoid a crash or a reset. Kinda like the bucket analogy I came up with when I was talking about game resets on another Iceberg. For those of you that don't know, go watch the third Iceberg for the explanation, or else we'll be here a while. Well, longer than we already are. I gotta say, it's the little quirks in zombies that keep these icebergs coming out, I swear. Russman's cooking. And what I think makes good characters in this mode are the little details that make them feel human. Don't get me wrong, I'm an Ultimus lover. Their characters are walking memes.
Kaboom. The explosion is intense. I cannot contain myself.
But I'm a bit of a soft boy, and I think seeing the emotional arc that Primus went on from Origins in BO2 to Tag in BO4 was such a base direction for them to go. Seeing the deep emotions they have and the small intricacies that make them feel like people. What I'm saying is, it's the small things sometimes too. For Victus, they are nobodies, not overachieving soldiers you'd instantly think of when you gotta pick someone to match up against zombies. So having these guys feel relatable is important. You know, like how Stuhlinger eats rotting corpses. Russman can be seen cooking in the COD Zombies comic series and makes our other three some good food. We also know that his mother is dead and she was a good cook. I can just tell by looking at this guy and the aura he gives off in that apron that he can make a mean stew. So anyway, you can put two and two together and assume that his mother turned this chungus of a man into the team dad by teaching him her cooking before she died. I'm now changing his name from Russman Homeless to Russman Dad Homeless. Looks like we know his full name after all. Anti-115. In the game files for Shangri-La, the codename for the focusing stone is Anti-115. An interesting choice of words for what is the biggest problem for everyone involved in this situation. It makes rotting monsters rip and tear people to shreds, and you're telling me that there's something to fight back against it blatantly spelled out? We know that the focusing stone is used and merged with the Vril device to open up the MPD and swap bodies with Samantha. The rock looks like a deeper red colour than the usual orangey look that the original 115 meteor has, and is less veiny looking, and more like underneath the surface of the stone's rocky exterior is the ball of magical matter. It gets complicated when you take into account that 115 colours have always changed over time, so you could play devil's advocate here and say this is simply normal 115, but it seems unlikely given the difference in design and the fact that it's literally called Anti-115. Weird that this has never been mentioned again or had any other influence, as this had so much potential and definitely seems like it was supposed to go somewhere. Downtown Beeline. It's not just the tram lines people would use to get around Morgue City in, it was also the buses. Not sure if I need to tell you this, but Zombies players have a weird relationship with buses. That one map made us view public transport as an Easter egg, and in Morgue City we can see it plainly. A bus, B bus, and even a C-bus. Oh my god, long vehicle that has 4 wheels? Is this a transit Easter egg? It very well could be. In the case of these buses in particular, the wheels on them aren't going round and round because they're abandoned. Found in the Footlight District, the location of them is downtown. And we can see that there are 3, although we're going to focus on mainly the 2, bus lines running, going to the same place. Bus A and Bus B. Some people think there's an Easter egg here, or at least used to, but I think the B bus itself is the Easter egg. If you inspect the bus model, you can see at the side it says Morgue City Transit. I don't think that part is a direct reference to transit, since if it was, it would surely be spelt with a Z instead of an S, just like how the map name is. The B and A line stuff going on a bus though, after the mad hype we saw last time something like that came up, I believe it. Just a little nudge by the devs to say that they remember too. Tram Route B, but that doesn't mean that Bus Route B stopped there. Its influence stayed relevant years down the line, and the moment we had another transport system introduced in Shadows of Evil via the tram, it was go time for speculation. Okay, it might not have happened in transit, but what if this time there's an alternative route that the tram can go down? a tram route B. Now once again, we have to look at this with glorious hindsight, as we know there actually was a planned alternative bus route B for transit. So there were a lot of people that did say this as a joke, but there clearly was something more there. So whilst this was used as a joke sometimes, it also can swing the other way. It's never been said from anything I've ever found when researching the topic that a tram route B was planned, but much like transit, Shadows of Evil has a lot of cut content that behind the scenes, and especially knowing that Jimmy Zielinski himself also worked on Shadows of Evil as well as transit, it wouldn't surprise me if there was some idea pitched or idea planned for an alternative tram route. At one point there were people speculating about this, and it's a prime example of history repeating itself. Nothing was ever discovered, and so the theories died down after some time passed, and so we'll never truly know if a tram route B was a real thing at one point or not. It's safe to say it's not in the game though, but if it was, and if there were ideas for it, where would it be going? We're gonna cover that later. Question mark, 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 You know what, we'll try a different way. Question marks. Do you know what the game over song is called when you die in Kino? Because apparently no one does. Not even Kevin Sherwood, the guy that made the music. As you go onto the video on YouTube of it, you'll see a bunch of question marks where the song title is. In the description it says, well now you know that this song is called Abracadabra. It implies that at the time of making it, he didn't know the name of the song, so just filled it with question marks as a placeholder. Ted's name origin. I know him, you know him, he probably knows you. I'm sure you've been barred from the bus at least once. It's our metal lad, Ted. T to the E to the double D. Why is this his name? In fact, hang on a minute. We've never seen him referred to by that alias from anyone in the COD Zombies universe, have we? There's no name badge, one-off quote, or anything of the sort, so it naturally makes you wonder then, why is his name Ted? There are people that were debating the names, some saying that this was the case, we had no trace of his name, and some saying he was officially called that all along, that the game was rigged from the start. There aren't many actual answers to the debate until years later. It's been confirmed as canon. A post on the COD Lore Facts Twitter account states that some guy made up an acronym ages ago, and it stuck from there, being taken on by the devs. I guess you could say this is the good ending to the Leroy name that the giant got him buried. Much like the Iceberg entry in question, everyone colloquially called him Leroy, and it was so widespread through forum posts, YouTube videos, and split screening with the boys, that we all turned to Treyarch expecting Leroy to be his name. But then they said it was Arthur. The one we got here with our bus driver shows how Treyarch adopted this name for the Tin Man, and this was so widespread that you can even look around and see that the community gave a proper acronym to the name. Technical, elaborate, driving droid. The only thing that's annoying me about this one right now is that I cannot find the actual post where the original name started, despite my efforts. Does this mean that Treyarch never had a name for him? Not necessarily. In the game's code he's referenced as Automaton. Maybe this is what they wanted him to be called. Or maybe it was just a code name for the files, and you could argue he wasn't supposed to have a name at all. Zombies standalone game. This one is an ever-expanding cosmos of a rabbit hole, as there is always new information coming out about it, whether it be true or not. It would even drive a 1940s noir detective up the wall. This entry fits within the big three of yearly COD Zombies rumours. Zombies Chronicles 2, Primus or Ultimus returning, and a Call of Duty Zombies standalone game. I've covered Chronicles 2 before, but not the old crew returning as of yet, or the standalone game. The latter there has so much information surrounding it that there's not a hard drive big enough to store it. For a bit of housekeeping, let's assume half of it's fake. That might even be too generous, but I'm talking about the tweets from rando accounts that contribute nothing or are clearly just ripe crops during clout farming season. But there are other questionable things that allegedly point towards a zombie standalone experience being real at some point or another. So be aware that this could easily be true, but as is only natural for these types of things, there's a cloud of mysticism that circles around this stuff. The game was called Project Z, and you'll notice details are floating around, but there's no mind-blowing, nut-busting pre-alpha gameplay of it, as development was never started. In fact, it never even made it past design documents. Project Z was meant to be not merely a standalone game tied to COD, but a game entirely independent from the IP, being a brand new thing and not connected to the franchise in any way. And it wasn't Treyarch that were tasked with making it. The idea was actually slid over to Raven Software, who, as you might know, are always helping Call Call of Duty out as a co-developer of sorts, because at the time, Treyarch allegedly didn't know if they wanted to continue Zombies after Black Ops 1. It was described as a fun, campy, and experimental type of game that was going to use the framework of the Chinese game Call of Duty Online, a live service experience, meaning we'd be seeing updates of content pumped into the game. Zed was going to carry over the standard co-op 1 to 4 player experience, and here's where it gets kind of crazy. We were supposed to play as a gladiator. You'd be fighting off the Horde in an arena, so think something akin to 9 on Black Ops 4. Furthermore, the aesthetics were meant to be a Mad Max-esque thing, so I can imagine it looking apocalyptic punky, with thrown together weapons and armor, along with maybe rusted metal barricades all around, and crude spikes at the top of them or something, making up the arena. I don't know for sure about how exactly it would look, but I don't think it would hurt to paint a picture. This was all around 2011 to 2012 by the way, so if this popped off and the content stream was good, this would have been way ahead of its time and would have shown most shoddy live service slop we see today how the big boys play. Treyarch eventually wanted Raven to not see the project through as it would interfere with them going ahead with Zombies and create unnecessary competition, and with that, Project Z was put down. No other plans were made for a Call of Duty Zombies standalone game that we know of. What's interesting though is that other credible sources have come out before and said that apparently there have been other attempts. Monty and Shadowman relationship. In Revelations, we learn so much more about these two boomers through various lines of dialogue, and after hearing both sides, you'll come out of it just as confused as you were before about the two.
Now here's the thing. I knew a bloke, and I'm talking way, way, way back. He was the sweetest, most charming individual you could ever wish to meet. He was funny too. We used to have such a good old laugh together. Honestly, my sides hurt thinking about it. He was my friend. He was my best friend. And then the Apothicons got hold of him. Since then, he's pretty much acted as their agent, zipping around the galaxy. Yeah, let's get on with it. Short version is, he's no longer sweet, charming, or funny. He's what brought them here.
You do realize that he's manipulated you? That's what he does. Dr. Monty is just one of the many names he's been known by. The Great Dragon, the Beast. Is this ringing any bells? Beelzebub, Lucifer, Satan, the Devil.
Now, the immediate thing you can guess is that Monty is God, the Shadow Man is the devil. However, there might be more nuance than that, as we hear the Shadow Man say that he is fooling us. Dr. Monty is merely one of his names, and that he's been known as basically every other name you would attribute to the devil. Satan, Beelzebub, the devil, etc. You'd be led to believe that it really is as clear-cut as one is good, one is bad. But throughout everything we've learned about the two, especially Dr. Monty over the rest of the Aether storyline, we can see that it isn't as simple as that. Dr. Monty tells us that he used to know the Shadow Man a long time ago, and that they used to have such a good laugh together, and were clearly best mates. He apparently isn't like that anymore. With what both sides have told us, they are both as bad as each other. There is no inherently good force here. It's just that, collectively, they are pieces of shit. They just stink in a different way. The Shadow Man also mentions that Monty is manipulating us, that that's what he does, and given how Monty actually did do that to us, maybe the Top Hat Man is onto something. Monty says that once the Apothicons got to the Shadow Man, he changed. If we are to hear out the Shadow Man for a second, then we could assume that he's been manipulated before by the homeless looking man, and he turned to the Apothicons to stop him. But on the other hand, this is coming from the guy that coerced remorseful people into giving him a universe-altering artifact for his own benefit. Yeah. Monty seems to give the most detailed evidence about them clearly having history, but who knows. There are differences in their stories that ultimately will never give us the full picture, and I can only imagine there is a lot on both sides that happened when we're talking about the history of gods that dates back thousands of years. Transit time period debate. If you had to guess when Transit is set, what decade would you pin it down to? The 60s maybe? Or would you say it's 2025? The year which Black Ops 2's campaign and multiplayer is actually set? That very question became a huge debate debate amongst players as transit seem to have both old and futuristic things going on around the map. Now I'm gonna skip the tickling and get right into the wrestling. It's set in 2035, even further into the future than some think. There are people that loathe hearing this and refute it, but the official Zombies timeline confirms it. I always thought that it was 2025, but the timeline here says it's 2035. The beginning of the Green Run era story, you could say, started in 2025, but the infamous map itself is canonically the former. Yet people still seem to debate this for some reason. They strongly believe that it's the 60s or 70s, and I do understand why they would think that, but it's simply not the case. It's a strange phenomenon. I've even received comments before of people trying to correct me, saying that it's not in the future. But what sparked such a debate? What made this such a hot topic? Well, if you look around the map, you can see stuff like old TVs and the iconic vintage looking diner. Even the loading screen is a jolly old postcard. Reasons like this threw people through a loop and for some reason still have them convinced. You can find lots of posts of people talking about this debate and the overall speculation of this mysterious town. It's also worth mentioning that Die Rise, Buried and Nuketown are also set in 2035. And so when the timeline came out, giving exact dates, it finally put this one to bed. Okay, this next one is kinda wild. Stuhlinger is a time traveler. There's a surreal theory stating that Samuel Stuhlinger is a time traveler. How did I get to talking about this in my life? I believe what it's saying is that Stuhlinger is the same as a CIA agent, because we can see pictures here that the guy posted side by side. And while in all fairness, there is a resemblance between the two, similar haircut, same face structure and build, I don't think that's enough to confirm anything. The rest of the theory goes on that the zombie in Call of the Dead is Stuhlinger, and he got cured with the VR11 and sent up the green beam where I guess he time traveled, eventually going to the 2020s, and since he mentions aliens, it's further proof of that. The more I'm going on about this, the more I think it might be a shitpost, but at the same time, I at least can understand a little bit where this might come from. There's also a quote from him in Die Rise that says, "I put the FU in future," which is also an eyebrow-raising quote, but I'd say it's more of a quip. I don't think it has much merit, but it's an obscure and wild thing to talk or think about. Okay, future me here. Some of the research has come up, and it adds a lot of credibility to this. And by the way, if I sound a little weird right now, it's because that sore throat caught up with me. Don't worry, you'll get what I mean at the end of the video. David Boat, the voice actor of Stuhlinger, said in an interview, "Currently, I'm the certifiable nutjob CIA agent Stuhlinger in the zombie element of Black Ops 2. Okay, it might not outright confirm it, but there definitely might have been plans for this guy to be much more than just a crazy conspiracy theorist. So there you go. I'm just gonna leave you with that. Griffin Station in Gordcrovy. This time I managed to type Griffin and not Griffith. I'm still traumatized though. Last time I talked about this, I just finished volume 13 of Berserk, and now I am all caught up. I've caught up with absolutely all of it. And I've got to say, it is peak media. I can't wait for the new chapters to come out. We got one more coming out in like 2 weeks, and then we'll probably have a hiatus for like 10 years, but you know, truly a life-changing experience. Hopefully I can see the ending of Berserk before I die, because that'd be kind of nice. Anyway, Griffin Station can be seen on a monitor amid the ruins of Stalingrad. One of the monitors displays the teleporter where you go back to spawn at Area 51, and the other one is where the box usually tends to spawn, which is the room behind the power switch. And for this last one, I can't tell where it is. So if anyone wants to have a fun game of Zombies GeoGuessr, then by all means go ahead, because I don't know what room this is. Is it the spawn room for Moon, not Area 51, the one you go to after Area 51, and you have to put your PES mask on? Is it that spawn room? I can't tell. Is it even a real place on the map at all? Seeing something as simple as this brings about a nice sense of connectedness. Is that a word? Google Docs didn't say otherwise, so we'll go with it. And continuity that helps such vast whimsical places we visit feel actually linked. Voyage of Despair Secret Room. By golly, this entry is a full-on schizo theory and was a fun mystery at the time. Although when you hear it, you'll be left wanting more because this is still a little weird overall. We're gonna look at Black Ops 4 as a whole, as I feel this is not only a good Iceberg entry, but it's worth going over this more broad topic before we dive into the more detailed part of this, which is where we'll get into the meat and potatoes of the entry. In some of the maps, there are secret doors which I want to cover individually another time in specific detail, but that's really all all you need to know for now. There are so far speculated secret rooms found in 9, Classified, Dead of the Night, and Ancient Evil. And as for Alpha Omega and Tag der Toten, it gets a bit more complicated. The Reddit post I've found compiling speculated secret rooms or outright finding something is 6 years old as of me making this video, and at that point in time, both the maps I mentioned weren't even out, with Alpha Omega coming out on the 9th of July 2019, and Tag releasing on the 23rd of September that same year. This post was made before these on the 13th of May 2019. So as to those two, I can't say for certain. The maps where there definitely are secret rooms are Blood of the Dead and Voyage of Despair. Remember this last one? It's gonna be important. I know. Pure, refined foreshadowing. Blood of the Dead's is a weird one. We can't get in, but something's clearly there. And as for Voyage, much like Elden Ring lore, it gets a little more complicated. Researching this tickled the part of my mind that made me remember why I like COD Zombies. There is something more going on with the Titanic map though. Voyage of Despair has a mysterious door near the spawn that can't be interacted with in any way, but a guy called Jek47, which is whose gameplay's up on screen too, used mods to get the door open. You'll realise that this heavily resembles the room from the intro, where the cultist guy casts some tomfoolery. We can see the pictures of the Chaos Crew there, and hey look, is that a cipher? Yes. It's been cracked, luckily for us. Suck on them nuts, Revelations. It was done using a table of hermetical substances, which looks to be alchemy, and it says, the 7th gate, and through the final gateway, we transform. The world's dualities unite as one. Celebrate this transition, do not mourn. The separation between us undone. Through the darkness we come, evolved and pure, but this conversion will not be for all. The path must be forged, for we are the cure. With damnation, we survive the great fall. 6 gateways we passed with vigor and might, to become the reflection we now form. The self and the all, once more will bind tight. In this new image, we are all reborn. The rejuvenation of blood begins. The coalescence with light will be found. The forgiveness of the soul and our sins, the enlightenment to which we are bound. Yeah, that's... what the fuck does that even mean? Don't need to go to church to have a religious experience, apparently. I deadass wish I knew, but like, does anyone?
What?
This cipher was either supposed to be incredibly cryptic for the sake of it, as a brain teaser I guess, or not have any significance until a larger plot detail is revealed later on in the storyline. I'm gonna have to go with the latter here. I got a feeling that this downright devotional sounding scripture here is the warped beliefs of the Order. This is their doctrine, the reason they believe what turning people into mindless zombies is all about. I mean, look at these lines here. Through the darkness we come evolved and pure, but this conversion will not be for all. The path must be forged, for we are the cure. That right there is prime crazy people talk. They believe that even though not everyone will see eye to eye with what dark arts they're up to, it is morally, objectively right to them, and they will not be told otherwise. Delving into this has made me sad to see how we don't have any conclusion to the story for the Chaos Crew, and I know I bring that up every damn time I talk about this side of zombies, but ugh, it was good. I'm sad now. Campaign difficulty affects zombies. Remember when Black Ops 4 came out with difficulty and it was considered a big deal because of how players could finally tweak the zombies experience to their liking? Game's too hard and making you want to swan dive into a wall? Lower it. Too easy? Time for divine punishment. While several games earlier on World at War and Black Ops 1, Treyarch already beat themselves to it. It's hidden away on campaign's difficulty. Let me explain. If you pick recruit difficulty, the easiest one, and are swiped by a zombie, you won't get red screened, meaning you haven't taken enough damage for the game to warn you you're in danger. Switch over to the hardest setting, veteran, and when you get hit that first time, you'll get red screened. Now of course, no matter what, you're gonna go down on the second hit with both of these anyway, but the point is, the zombie is still actually doing more damage to you. These subtle changes also extend to things like traps doing more or less damage, and health regeneration being faster or slower. So this whole time, if there has been any random bullshit or inconsistencies in your matches of World at War and Black Ops 1 zombies matches that is enough to make you believe in the Mario 64 game personalization, then this might just explain it. Traps feeling inconsistent in damage, getting random red screens a little too early, even the low/no no ammo message sometimes not showing up, health taking as long as it does on BO6 to regenerate, so about 5 business days, all of it can be explained by this: free will in zombies. I think it's only fitting to have this one as low down as it is due to its bizarre and lightly philosophical nature that can raise questions about the way our characters act and how much they're capable of on their own. There's a quote from Monty about the concept of free will in this universe, and for anyone that might not know, free will is the idea of being able to do whatever it is you want to do, not affected by greater forces or a preconceived path. In zombies, I'd say it certainly exists, but our characters, more specifically Primus, are heavily strained. The quote says,
"You see, the thing is, I'm meant to stay on the sidelines, not really supposed to get involved. Free will and all that stuff. Oh, that was my idea, by the way. However, I do see stuff now and then that makes me go, ooh, that's not good. I really should do something. But the thing is, all I can really do is give things a little nudge. Sow a seed, plant an idea, see what grows, see what sticks. Where do you think all these magic weapon boxes come from? The chalk drawings on the wall, the magic ammo drops, the gumball machines? Do I need to go on, or do you get the message? I just hope you appreciate it."
You heard it here. This man is the CEO of Free Will. It was his idea, and given everything else known about Monty, he very well could be the corrupted god of this world. He makes a point of our characters being able to act freely, but then basically says, yeah, I only gave them access to firearms from a magic box, invented magical drinks that can turn you into a human bomb, and definitely will put you in a time loop if you try to invade my house. Oh, but by all means, do whatever you want. Doesn't really feel like Primus can 100% do whatever they want when there's that much interference, does it? When this god is actively changing the environments they're in and the course of history during World War II. However, there is hope, as we do know that our squad can kind of go behind his back, as we see in Blood of the Dead, which he was unaware of. He may be omnipotent, but much like Batman, he can't be everywhere. Okay, so maybe it's predetermined by the Chronorium, the book that literally spells out someone's fate when they read it. We've seen Richtofen and Nikolai actively resist or follow the page's tales. And so although this is always going to be a debate, it seems almost deliberately not made clear. I personally believe that there is free will in this universe, but if you want to enact it, you have to fight for it. Python Downs teammates. Don't worry, there's no snakes that are about to crawl out through the Pentagon on 5 and get you, but by some rotten spaghetti code that managed to wiggle its way into Black Ops 1 zombies, if one of the boys you're playing with goes down, and you've been talking smack about them, saying how much they suck at the game, and that they've never actually beaten the Hitler boss, if they happen to have the Python revolver on them, and want to see you taste the floor with them, they simply have to point it at you and shoot. During that moment, friendly fire was tolerated. 4th District. I wonder where that tram route B would have led to. Maybe a 4th District? So there's a little conspiracy theory that started about Shadows of Evil a while back, that maybe there was supposed to be an additional 4th District within Morgue City that was meant to be in the game, but got scrapped due to hardware limitations, because have you seen how big Shadows of Evil is? Not to even mention the detail, which yeah, even on a PS4 and Xbox Series X, Shadows put some serious strain on them. This was also allegedly where Tram Route B would have led to. Now there's no hard evidence, but if you take into consideration the insane cut content that's been confirmed for Shadows, and then by extension the entirety of Black Ops 3 Zombies, it can get the wheel turning a bit as to how many drop plans one of the most ambitious maps we've ever seen might have had. If you look on the map, you can see the 3 branching districts from Spawn, and then this other area called Downtown that's weirdly vacant, put together with the rest of them as though all it had to do was be labelled and it would have fit right in and made sense structure-wise. It's like something is missing from the map layout. Also, if you head to said place, you'll notice that there's actually plenty of buildings and paths textured that easily could have been its own other section. It could have been home to another perk, a wall buy, or box location or something. Take into account the grapple hooks that sit nearby as though there would have been a reason to use them to get around the district in beast mode, and just maybe there could have been more to this eyebrow-raising 4th District that never came to be. PS3 Shinonuma round change sound. Admit it, you secretly love to hear that special round sound and Samantha demand that their souls are fetched, and easy max ammo is on its way. Oh shit, these are World at War hellhounds we're talking about? In that case, Run. Although PS3 players might remember that round change sounding a little different, as there's a more unsettling and more layered version of the iconic riff that we've grown accustomed to. Take a listen to both versions. I'll play the original first and then the alternate PS3 version next.
The Devil's Dogs. No match for the U.S. Marines. Oh, those don't sound like freak bags.
That was terrifying, actually. 9-year-old me would have been on the floor by now. The additional lightning strike sounds and the disturbing howls of the zombie dogs make me actually scared to face them, especially given how aggressive and beefy they were in World at War. This was a cut version of it, but somehow it made it into the PS3 version of the game, more specifically on Shinonuma, and was never patched out, I guess. I do kinda wish this one was the one that made it into the final version of Zombies. The extra sounds and spooky undead canine howls are like Viagra for atmosphere. Treyarch, are you afraid to get wet or something? Come on, why was this cut? The giant camo in Shadows of Evil. There's a small detail in the Shadows of Evil trailer that I don't think anyone is talking about, and it's taken me years to notice. We get a brief look at the KN-44 that's being reloaded inside the Burlesque, and if you pause and look at it for a minute, you might recognize the camo on the gun. Like the entry says, this is the one from the Giant, and I have no idea what it's doing here. It's most likely there as a placeholder camo whilst they make the Pack-a-Punch camo for Shadows, for that gun or something. To play devil's advocate though, you could say that Treyarch only needed to copy and paste the one from Mob of the Dead, so why not just do that? Wasn't the camo already done for them? Now I'm throwing the tinfoil hat on and throwing this out here, but what if it isn't a coincidence and it could be alluding to something more? Think about the gun the camo is on. The KN-44. I swear this thing has a way of coming back around in some way. It could be a hint for whatever this strange occurrence is about, and that maybe there are clues on the Giant. It's most likely not the case, but given how crazy the KN mystery has gotten at this point, with physics equations getting involved, and it appearing everywhere, and the other stuff I've talked about, in conclusion, it's a niche little detail that could be part of a much bigger secret. Anygun Chalk. So this was a cut feature from World at War Shinonuma that was supposed to function like the box, so gambling addicts would have had another reason to play this game on top of the mystery box. I'm guessing the chalk drawing would have just been the 2 question marks like we see on the box, and then you'd be buying it for, I'm assuming, 950 points, and it could cycle through different chalk drawings and give you a weapon of varying quality, until you either take it or leave it and then rinse and repeat. This would have been fun, but we know absolutely nothing about this one other than its Mystery Box War Weapon Edition. I'm guessing this didn't get added because you might as well just put the war weapons in the Mystery Box as well, like how most of them are. Nero predicted Shadows of Evil. Nero Blackstone is a character we know barely anything about, but we get these odd quotes and little nuggets of info that hits you in the face and makes you do a double take, such as in mentioning that he can distinguish objects as interdimensional, mentioning a few times about how there's a dimensional convergence taking place, where we see them bleeding into one another, and I can't forget him predicting the swords that you can acquire in the map. But oh my sweet viewer, this goes further than a few one-off quotes or Jeff Goldblum just being Jeff Goldblum. He was in fact studying the dark arts to improve his magic and salvage his failing career. We aren't given an exact idea as to the specifics, but we do know that he was reading a book that isn't the Chronorium. The book can be found during the flagstep of the Easter egg, and we can hear our characters comment themselves on its odd nature, including Nero, who drops a bombshell.
This was the one book that I was afraid to read, the one book that gave me nightmares. Even now, I just can't.
That man has gotten a 25 kill streak because that was a lore nuke. He says that he's too scared to read the book, and it gives him nightmares of the undead and a tentacled monster, and essentially the events of everything we play through. And Jessica, being a apparent bookworm, a real speed reader, reads the book and mentions the Great War.
I'm a fast reader. Blah, 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 blah. For 2 millennia, the Keepers kept the forces of darkness at bay. Their power is always dormant, just waiting to be awoken, just as it was on the battlefields of the Great War.
So before all of this kicks off, Nero was seeing glimpses of, presumably, the future in his dreams, and possibly being fed otherworldly information in the same way the Chronorium would to its reader, albeit not as strongly or plainly, but clearly Nero has seen enough to have been able to have predicted this hell on Earth. It even makes this quote hit much harder.
I can hear you. Jeez, are you the one I saw in my dream?
I could go on and on about this guy, and I'm sure there are more entries that can be squeezed out of him, so I will quit yapping for now. They can only watch you if you gift them your soul. One of the most cryptic messages can be found on a wall in the labs of the classified version of the Pentagon. And I'm gonna say it again because it's such an odd phrase. They can only watch you if you gift them your soul. Wall quotes like "salvation lies above" and "help" are self-explanatory enough. Even writings like "Teddy is a liar" were explained eventually, but this one? Well, this one feels like a red herring. Let's unpack this one. We need to know who they are and why we would gift them our souls, and why that would mean they could watch us. The thing is, it's not clear. Maybe it's the way it's worded or the context of what we know paired with it, but it remains ambiguous. We know that the souls of Primus were being sent to the house, and by proxy to Monty. So is this implying that the Godman knows where the boys are by having their soul? Well, not really, because he couldn't keep track of them during pretty much all of Black Ops 4's Zombies run, leaving the chilling quote on the long list of odd details that stick out in this mode. Chronicles cycle. Here's one that changed the way I viewed the importance of Zombies Chronicles in the larger storyline. You might look at these at first and think they're nothing more than simple remasters. And for those that know it's something more, well, this kind of takes that idea and expands on it even more. To lay out some groundwork here, you could say that because there are multiverses in which our characters try and fail to change or break the cycle they're in, that being Primus in their constant loop we see during BO2 Origins to Revelations, there is also the point where the cycle diverts during Blood of the Dead and a new path starts, which technically is another cycle. And in Zombies Chronicles, we are very blatantly told via Monty over the radios that these are more than mere remasters and are alternate realities. And we can see this for ourselves from the various inconsistencies with the maps, such as the Verrucht Fountain looking completely different from the cross shape in World at War and Black Ops 1, instead being a robed lady. There is nothing stopping these versions of the maps we play through as being the story taking us through a new cycle that is the same one where the version of Ultimus go on to be the exact ones we see in Classified. And to reiterate this, not the ones from World at War and Black Ops 1, the original Ultimus I guess you could say, but this new Ultimus that we control in ZC. When I looked up this theory, I thought, what about Moon though? We play on Moon on Zombies Chronicles, and Classified doesn't take place when Moon does. In fact, it's before. Well, you could view it as the exact moment where the cycle gets fractured and is splitting into two separate ones. If we take a look at the Classified cutscene, it kinda spells this out. Seeing as the events of Kino, Shang, and presumably Call of the Dead play out, but we see Dempsey shoot the baby gun. No, I'm not calling it by the actual name, I'm not reading all that. He shoots it in the teleporter as it messes with the inner workings and sends them not to Moon, as visually shown when they bounce off of it, but the Pentagon, and that's where the rest of the events of the BO4 story play out. With all this put together, you could make a sensible assumption that these characters that wind up in Classified are the version of Ultimus from this separate Chronicle cycle that we go through. Since the original Force Fate ended at Moon when they were stuck there, the timeline was fractured on a new cycle and a sub-branch was created, as we repeat that loop whenever we play Chronicles to Tag de Toten. It would actually explain the existence of the elusive DLC 5 since, like I said at the beginning, it's made very clear through quotes and visual changes throughout the maps that they are alternate versions. So it fits into a picture much bigger than just, these are separate universes. Makes sense? Yeah, it feels a bit headfucky, so we'll move on. Round 6000. I've been wanting to cover this one for a few Icebergs now, and I thought now is the time to finally do it. So here we go. It might be one of the most simple yet perplexing things that is so obscure, it could have easily gone unnoticed, but we live in the timeline where it was discovered. using cheats. In fact, using cheats is the only way anyone can see this, as it requires you to get to round 6,000 on zombies in Spaceland. Oh, it's a rare moment for a non-Treyarch Zombies title to come up on the Icebergs. High Infinite Warfare zombies, and as we know, there is always a round limit at 256 on these games due to hardware difficulties. Once reaching the unobtainable number, for a reason I don't think we'll ever know, the zombies are seen wearing space helmets. I don't know if this is just my warped brain here, but in a way, it's hard to explain. Does anyone else think this is a little bit unsettling to randomly see this? A little bit. It makes no sense. There's no rhyme or reason for all the zombies to suddenly be wearing these odd looking helmets, and even getting to this round and finding this legitimately is out of reach. And when you do get there by alternative means, it's as though you found something you shouldn't have. So you want an explanation? Anything at all. Best we've got is that it was either an inside joke of some sort, some kind of testing, or the one that makes the most sense to me given how packed this map is full of stuff. What we're seeing is a cut Easter egg that may have been shoved in the back of the cupboard, in a place the devs don't think anyone would find it. It could be unfinished and its remains are just laying dormant. Or just maybe this mysterious cosmic Easter egg still hasn't been solved. Ghost children. Around World at War, it's no secret that we can hear the agonising hollers and cries of the ghosts that inhabit the asylum's halls, but everyone knows that at this point. The game isn't exactly subtle about it, more like a drunk football hooligan attending a lecture. What's much less known though is that if you listen very closely at just the right times around Derice, you'll hear remnants of the supernatural. Creepy German children singing. Gets you thinking that maybe there were German families killed in order for 935 to build this facility. Or maybe they were just paranormal residents that were brought about as a result of World War II or something. Maybe they were even experimented on at the facility. They could have even been from further back in time, but I'm just tossing ideas out here. It's creepy as shit all the same. What's more, this also extends to Shinonuma, where not only can you hear those children singing, but also the whispers of the damned, trying to tell you something, and what sounds like a girl crying. Alpha Black Ops 2 World at War maps. Although Black Ops 3 was widely remembered for its insane zombies remasters as DLC 5, the idea was actually supposed to be done during Black Ops 2, but Activision made probably the biggest fumble known to mankind and told Treyarch to scrap it, because it would overlap with their newest COD game that was out in 2013, and they want to drive all the attention there, so they don't lose that sweet money. Call of Duty veterans are absolutely pissing themselves on the floor right now, or crying profusely, because they'll know the game that was out during that time. Call of Duty Ghosts. I'm as pale as a ghost after hearing that was the reason why. Although I can't be entirely shocked, because remember the Kino de Toten was supposed to be DLC 4 for World at War thing? Yeah, same story, but much more tragic. We wanted this so bad, we're sat there like Mike Ehrmantraut by the river, staring at it, and dreaming of what a full-fledged release would have been like. This was rumoured, but a huge leak came out that doesn't feel malicious at all, but more of an interesting state of time, where we can get a vague glimpse of what could have been. Jugger V2 has uploaded a ton of this gameplay of him playing all the content, and we can see the Verrucht one here looks so good. Seeing Black Ops 2 weapons, the HUD, sounds and so on looks so wrong here, but so right. There's also other things that have came to light about this map pack, such as it including not just World at War maps, but all the other maps from Treyarch's previous classics have been thrown in there too, including Ascension, Shangri-La, Moon, skipping over Call of the Dead I guess, and not forgetting the best zombies map of all time. Kino der Toten, Black Ops 1. There is an insane amount to cover here, which I can't do all of it in one Iceberg entry, but I did want to bring up the DLC 5 stuff specifically because of how badly people were demanding this, and how insane the rumours over it really got. And to think, we've speculated and talked about this, and all this time, something was actually in the works and was really close to happening. And we kind of heard it here and there over the years, but we never had anything concrete. That lack of evidence drove people out of the rabbit hole. We didn't just find the smoking gun here, we found the whole armory. And when I mentioned this on an earlier Iceberg, to think that the most we had was, I think, the little map icon in the Black Ops 2 font of Derice, showing that these World at War remasters were like a thing, and now we've got the whole gameplay of all the maps. It's gotta be the Ellie's real moment of the COD Zombies community, Shangri-La Mountain Range. Well, it's about that time for another thread of insanity, one straight out of the asylum. The only scriptures that would make even the Joker wince in confusion, intimidated that someone matched his madness. Yes, I know I'm saying this whilst being balls deep into the 6th Iceberg, but hey, these forum posters are on another level. We're going to be taking a look at this glorious thread on, you know what time it is, say it with me, CallOfDutyZombies.com. Our journey begins on a forum post 12 years ago. User Javano made a thread highlighting some things about Shangri-La and the many secrets and theories about the map. It kicks off with a surprisingly detailed breakdown of the loading screen, more specifically mentioning the placement of the mountains relative to the shrines and bridge. I immediately found this jarring. Why are we talking about this? Let's get back to that question in a minute. The poster gives what I assume to be a color-coded diagram to get the point across, saying that despite what people might say about the mountain range, it's actually being viewed from a different perspective when we play on the map compared to the loading screen. That was certainly information. So this is where I was wondering, why are we posting about Shangri-La Mountains in such depth? Locating this thing on the loading screen and where we're looking at it from. Why are people apparently fixating over them? Call me a JCB because I did some more digging and found another CallOfDutyZombies.com thread. Can't say I don't spoil you guys. Once again, it brings up these mountains. We're presented with a few tweets that include Jimmy Zielinski. Remember, he was the head of zombies at the time, and he and a few others are talking shop. They seem pretty disjointed, almost like it's from another conversation, so I'm not going to bother reading it out, but the contention here is that he keeps bringing up the Shangri-La Mountains. The person making this, Tak, goes on to talk about how it's completely normal for mountains to be here on the map. But there is one that sticks out, and I'm now going to read the rest of this part out so we can get a clear understanding straight from the source. From the starting room, if you go through the maze and meander over to the bridge and look to the right, you'll see a lot of foliage and a mountain range. This mountain range, as you can see from the image below, does not look like it fits. To me, that mountain has more of a desert feel. There's no foliage on it and you can see obvious age with the rock, since it has layers and layers of different kinds of rock. If you look at the Shangri-La loading screen below, you can see a very green and luscious area, which makes sense because Shangri-La is said to be a very tropical location, even a paradise. However, it's oddly in a deep valley or canyon that looks not so green and lush. Alright, so Tak has observed that these mountains are dry looking, not full of the foliage that admittedly we can see in the map. Tak also goes on to say that the rocks appear more aged, and doesn't look like it even belongs here, all of which is jarring for a place that's considered a paradise. I still don't really understand where the obsession with these mountains is coming from, but I'm almost getting Sedan Billboard / Moralton's bunker vibes because at the time, this seemed to be quite the hot topic, but he's insistent that there is a reason for it to be worthy of such analysis, saying that I don't think Treyarch would put a mountain in there that looks so out of place without a reason, so I think Treyarch is referring to something much more. From this set of mountains, people collectively came to the conclusion that this is all part of the Shangri-La is on Mars theory, while my timbers have been shivered. See, I heard about the whole Mars thing, in fact it's been covered on the Icebergs before, but this takes it up a notch. It's almost like looking at it from a different angle, one that feels completely unhinged and once again shows the sheer tenacity of the theory crafting in the old days of these games, and how people would latch onto just about anything that they thought looked slightly out of place. The thing is, there are parts of the larger theory as a whole that I can sit back, look at, and think, yeah, this makes total sense, but the way the mountains are placed, maybe it's a leap too far, and I didn't realise that this had its own fully fledged discussion about it. Oh, but it's not over yet. Let's keep going, shall we? Now we see some more tweets with a guy called Donovan, not D's Nuts, just D's, let's behave ourselves, and he says how cool it would be to have a zombies map set on Mars, with Zielinski saying, anyone? Anyone? This could either be him asking to see if they think it's a good idea, or a subtle wink set up as a who's gonna tell him kind of thing. Then in 2013, he can be seen replying to a CNN tweet about Mars at one point being habitable, according to NASA. To which he tags Kevin Sherwood and says, "Sounds like paradise. You still with me?" I know it's a lot, but I never said CallOfDutyZombies.com forums were ever easy. Tak then says that there is a texture file, and its name is GP_ZTEM_Mars_Vista_card. And here is the image associated with it, with Tak saying, and I quote, "Looks like the Shangri-La mountain to me." So although that is kinda weird, this whole time, the insane fixation on this mountain led Zombies players to the conclusion that Shangri-La is definitely on Mars. The replies all fed into this too, as it started to spiral even more, with replies saying that this just blew my freaking mind. Some are skeptical as to how Brock and Gary got here, and then we have another set of people delving into some Greek mythology about 2 moons around Mars, the possibility that the Eclipses mode's second moon is just a 115 asteroid, and not a moon from Greek mythology, with Tak replying to this guy detailing that the embedding of the Earth's crust makes sense. I'd go on, but there isn't enough oxygen in the world that will allow me to read all of these replies, but I think you get the idea as to how it started, as a simple, "Hey, look at these mountains," to full-on mass hysteria of eager players theorizing something that maybe wasn't that deep, although it did yield something eventually. Tak did actually go back and update the post, mentioning how as time passed and more came out, he doesn't think Shang is on Mars all the time, just that at one point before we visited the map, it was, and so some of it may be outdated. But this thread was fascinating. It actually went deeper than the Sedan billboard one, and I've got to say, it was fun, and although we poke fun at stuff like this, for how nonsensical it can get and sound at times, I always enjoy seeing the shared enthusiasm and camaraderie. It flew so far off the trails that I need NASA to come back and give me one of their telescopes just to see it. And I can't express how cool it was to get to the end of the thread and find an interesting niche piece of information to add into the Shangri-La is on Mars part. But the Jimmy Zielinski tweets are kinda crazy if it isn't trolling, not gonna lie. Transit side quest. Now I know, Transit is the only map that can still keep appearing on these icebergs, despite having a whole episode dedicated to it. In all honesty, it's probably gonna keep popping up until the end of this series, whenever that is. That's just how in-depth it and Black Ops 2 as a whole is. Peter Livingstone, who worked at Treyarch as the tech lead in the Zombies team, tweeted out, "So I get the feeling people want to know about the side quest. Sorry, but you need to wait." It's in reference to the transit hunt for an extra Easter egg, a Bus Route B. Now although we do know Bus Route B isn't actually in the game, the wording here is interesting to me as he mentions side quest, which I'd say everyone can concur, and say that this would be something along the lines as a mini second Easter egg of sorts. Back in the day when the hype for the Bus Route B or whatever else people were looking for had died down, most people have moved on and realised it had to have been a troll. But given how much cut content we know exists, and the wild plans Blondell and Zielinski had for this game's third mode, refer back to DLC 5 leaks I covered, especially for Transit, the guy could have been telling the truth here. Yes, it might be a reach, and not that we would have actually seen anything, but the fact that something did in fact exist at one point or another, like I said with Bus Route B, the DLC 5, and all those random cut game modes and extra little maps, like Power Station for Black Ops 2, it's insane. You could say that about many maps, I'm sure, but Transit and BO2 as a whole was a different breed of ambition. For all we know, this could have been at a time where they really did have ideas for sub-Easter eggs in Transit, or at least for other maps to link back to Transit. With all the lost content and ideas, it makes you look back at stuff like this as quite sus, and makes you wonder, if they were taking the piss, how much were they actually joking here? The more stuff that keeps coming out with Black Ops 2 and other COD Zombies modes as a whole, it gives things like this a lot more credibility, so you can believe it if you want, or not, but food for thought if not anything else. Voyage of Despair doll. Residing in Voyage of Despair underneath a tipped over couch is a creepy doll staring back at you, and interacting with it will make it start talking to you, giving you yes and no answers. It might start giggling or sobbing about it too.
No. Yes. No. No. Yes. 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 No. Yes. Yes. No. No. Yes.
It also has a Weeping Angel's mechanic, sorry guys, just some trauma carrying over, where if your back is turned it will move slightly when you next look at it, and then it'll be still again. If you exhaust its dialogue like you're trying to get a side quest out of an Elden Ring NPC, you'll have received enough yes and no's to have yourself a binary cipher. Yep, Call of Duty Zombies for you. Binary consists of the ones and zeros which is used for the cipher, and once it's been cracked by someone way smarter than me and with more time on their hands, then we get 4, 14, 12, 6, 5. Seems like nothing but a solid setup to a game of Countdown, but those first digits, 4, 14, and 12, are the date when the tragedy of the Titanic occurred, April 14th, 1912. As for the 6 and 5, that was apparently how many people their lifeboats could carry. To anyone thinking, okay, so cool Easter egg, but this feels a bit out of place, brace yourself, this is where the realism hits. This little doll is most likely a reference to the Hart family, more specifically Eva Hart, a girl that boarded the Titanic when she was only 7 years old with her mother, Esther, and father, Benjamin. Eva had this doll she absolutely loved called Philomena, and when the Titanic struck the iceberg, the family had to flee quickly, and the girl had to part ways with her doll amidst the chaos, with both Eva and her mother luckily managing to escape. Her father Benjamin, though, sadly was lost to the tragedy. Eva went on to live through both world wars, working several jobs, and went on to have her own memoir about the disaster, and then sadly passed away from cancer in 1992 at 91 years old. That doll, Philomena, got swallowed by the mighty ocean, keeping it for a whole 37 years, before it was finally found amongst the wreckage, and I gotta say, it looks truly haunting knowing the events that took place and how this thing ended up here. What's left of the doll is displayed in a museum, and serves as a chilling reminder of the amount of harsh, nightmarish destruction that happened here, and innocence that was lost that day. Apparently it could be haunted, but I've not been able to find much on that. However, seeing the doll and knowing everything that happened carries an uneasy aura around it. Now when you see this doll in Voyage, knowing this haunting story will make it hit much harder. Moving teddy bear. I have never felt so validated in my life than I have by a fictional possessed teddy bear. Quick anecdote. There was a time a very young me was playing Buried not too long after it came out, and I was just walking around the central part of the map, and the mystery box was moved, so Samantha's teddy bear was sat on the top of the craze. I remember taking a glance and seeing this thing move its head, looking around before slumping back to its usual position. I never told anyone about this, nor did I think anything of it back then. A part of me didn't even think it actually happened, especially given that I never saw it again, right up until I found that this was in fact real, and I'm not losing it. Oh, I love the taste of sanity soup. Did anyone else ever see this? If you did and were in the same position as me, then rest easy. We'll get you out of the asylum soon. But really though, I'm sure you'll be doing the Leonardo DiCaprio pointing thing. For this to happen in-game is quite rare, and to see it you'll either need YouTube supply crate opening levels of luck to stumble upon it like I did, or have a staring contest with it and hope you don't get ganked by the next round. I find it both nightmare-inducing and undeniably cool that this was ever added in, and you might just catch this teddy bear spying on you in the corner of your eye the next time you play a match. Bend Down. There is a YouTube channel called Bend Down, Grow Up, Real Mature, that is a very standard Call of Duty Zombies channel of the old school era, making videos playing some classic maps, talking about Easter eggs that aren't actually there, and is even a feeder of the local homeless.
Speaking of hunger, you fancy a steak and kidney pie? Good choice.
He's doing music and stuff now, which you gotta respect, so the old Zombies videos are likely little fragments of a simpler time. Anyway, there's one Zombies video on here that got this entry all the way at the bottom, a black and white video called De Reese is in France, and here's what you get.
De Reese is in France, or more specifically, the giant is in France, literally. This video is for the future. Goodbye.
That's kind of weird, right? Cryptic is definitely the best word here, but to be fair, we already know this, so that still isn't all that crazy. If we look over what we've got here, we can see that he says, this video is for the future. Where and when exactly did we see that cipher? The Giant in France cipher was first seen on the Mob of the Dead loading screen at the string of FGX8D text, and if we check the date Mob of the Dead was released, it was on the 16th of April 2013. Ben's video was released on the 2nd of April. That's 2 weeks earlier that year when he came onto YouTube, dropped a cryptic video where he spat some facts, and then peaced out. He's not been known to work with Treyarch, and from his fake Easter egg videos he's done before, it seems like he cooked something up real spicy here. He knew this before anyone else did somehow, and dished out a huge piece of zombies lore that is still relatively obscure, and he's never commented anything about the video to this day. I couldn't find much else about the guy except for a post on Reddit where someone was talking about lore and brought the mysterious video to the discussion, and it seems like people didn't believe much of what Ben would say, which is understandable because of the fake videos. So him pulling a crazy mic drop here close to 12 years ago, before Mob of the Dead came out, is some 4D chess. It remains cloaked in ambiguity those 12 years later. Who this guy is, how he got this information, and what else he might have known, we just don't know. Strange creature in Moon Trench. It seems like there's something residing in the crevices of Chronicles Moon. When you go over to the big trench down where the rockets are, and you're met with the vacant void down there, which is already spooky enough, if you listen closely, occasionally you can hear a deeply disturbing noise. Hey, I don't remember wearing brown boxers today. Whatever, this was so cool, but also so eerie. There's gotta be something down there. The sound it makes sounds like a whale, which on its own would be adorable, but hearing it in this context is something entirely different. Our ears are then met with a screech too, almost like whatever it was is mimicking a whale and broke character. Whatever it is, the noises we hear are far down, and don't sound docile by any stretch, and it is never commented on by the characters, no quote or interaction or anything. You can't interact with it at all. It simply ominously sits far out there, and if this is anything, it expands Moon so much more and adds a new layer of nightmare fuel to the map and is a new take on the atmosphere of it. It's not a surprise by now that we know that there are elder gods pretty much everywhere in outer space, it seems, and this is before they were banished to the Dark Aether. It's not a far reach to say that it very well could be an elder god or some kind of apothecon creature that maybe lives under the crust of the moon, or trudges around the bottom of its dark trenches looking for something to devour. Well, that was another Call of Duty Zombies Iceberg down, and added to the collection. The more this series goes on, the more I can't believe how it's still going on. The fact that we are 6 icebergs in is a miracle to me anyway. Not only because COD Zombies still has lots of stuff out there to find and research and explain and document, but also because you keep watching, so thank you for that. I've also got some plans for other content in the works too. Maybe you'll see an iceberg on a different game, or some kind of analysis video on some other game too, and I'm really hyped to share it with you eventually, if I even get around to it. This stuff takes a long time. If you have any entries that aren't in this series, and you would want to see on the next iceberg, drop them down below. I'd be curious to see what you have to say, and if there's any other games that you want to see icebergs on, then let me know. The possibilities are endless. We could do a Red Dead Redemption one, Cyberpunk, Dying Light, Elden Ring, Fallout. The possibilities are endless, and YouTube are switching up their monetization. It doesn't seem like it's going to be very good, and it's quite concerning considering this is my full-time job. It's going to hit a lot of creators like a metal baseball bat, and so any financial support to this channel is more than appreciated, and I just want to let you know it goes a long way. Stuff like that does matter, especially in times like this, so if you're one of those people that's a channel member, or you drop a super thanks, then I can't begin to thank you enough for helping keep the lights on. And as you might have noticed, the transition music between the tiers sounds quite unique. That's because I had had these composed by the very talented Akichi M. Yes, that is a Persona 2 reference. I'll link the channel down in the description, and you can go and listen to those bangers. And I think that covers just about everything. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to smash the like button, and I really want to know what your favourite entry on the Iceberg was. Subscribe to the channel if you aren't already, you won't regret it, and consider becoming an exceptional member today. Thank you so much for watching. I have a sore throat coming on, so I'm going to stop talking now. I'll see you guys next time.